Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to our special council meeting, April 13th, 2026.
Roll call. Michael Wolf.
Present.
Tracy Witt.
Here.
Bill Aspey's absent. Ron Duddleston.
Here.
Tony Skaggs.
Here.
Mayor Eckstein.
Here.
I have both city attorneys here. And Clerk Treasurer Dana Watley here. Oh, thank you. You've already, I'll get
I've already signed.
Oh, thank you.
Light crowd here tonight. Tonight's main objective is to approve ordinance 2026-05, which represents the funding aspect of our combined sewer overflow phase 4. We have Jennifer Wilson from Crow and Julie Bowling from Craig and the Vault. They will speak here shortly. Got our attorneys too. So they will come up and speak basically here in a minute about kind of what they're part of it and why we have to do it. So part of this process is phase 4. Once this is complete, we will have completed our agreed order with IDEM, which was signed back in 2008. So then I'll do some monitoring after that to see how things are and, go from there. This, and Jennifer will talk about, this project is about $7.5 million. Hopefully the bids will come a little bit lower with that. Do you have any questions on the bonds in the past with this 1, 2, and 3 phase? Okay. I want to make sure that everybody's kind of on
I do not.
know what's going on, and this will add about $25 million approximately in debt service that we're paying for the combined sewer overflow with that. So obviously we're live streaming, so anything that we want to discuss or explain will benefit as we get ready for our public hearing, and which will be the second reading of this ordinance, May 4th, coming up in a couple of weeks. You guys have a copy of the ordinance? Looked at it, okay.
Do we know what the bond rate's going to be yet, or have any idea?
I'm going to have, just make sure you guys had it before we get started.
Okay.
So, no, you're good, Jennifer. I'm sorry, come on up and we'll let you start.
All right, thank you. Jennifer Wilson with Crow. I saw you here last year when we raised the rates in anticipation of this bond issuance. So we raised the rates last year in order to maintain our coverage on the outstanding bonds and for the new debt service and the debt service reserve on these upcoming bonds. So the bond size was estimated, or the project size is $7 million. The bond ordinance says $8 million. And that's to give us just a little bit of contingency in case those bids come in a little bit higher than we anticipate. We don't have the interest rate yet set yet. We haven't decided which way to go with how to finance it. The options usually, or how you did the last bond issuance, was that we had it privately placed in 2022 with local banks that had interest. Now we're going to make an evaluation and present that to the mayor and Dana on whether or not that would be a better way for you to go, or to go in the open market, or possibly even go through the Indiana Bond Bank. They have a community-focused resource program, and it's generally geared towards communities like you that are in the A range of rates, and the bonds are less than $10 million. So all those options are allowed in this bond ordinance. So I'll end there and see if you have any questions.
Yeah, so it's kind of like going out, you want to buy a car, you want to buy a house. You have to have your rating. You have to have a good rating to get a loan from a bank. When you go out and get a vehicle or a house. This is kind of the same concept. If our rating for, as a city isn't so high, we're not going to be able to get this bond. So part of that is where's our rates at on our utilities. So that's one reason why we did the rate increase. had to, um, you know, back last year, took effect this year. Questions? Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Okay, Julie?
I do William Street Hall. We acted as bond counsel in connection with several of your outstanding bonds, and so several of you look familiar. But just as Jennifer and the mayor said, what this ordinance does is it provides the parameters for which you can issue these bonds. It's rather lengthy, as you probably saw, but in it, it does allow for, you guys give the mayor and the clerk treasurer some authority to go out and make some decisions as long as they fall within the scope that's set forth in this ordinance. So that's where it will say you can issue bonds that can't exceed $8 million. So if those bids come in and it would be require bonds in excess of $8 million, this ordinance would not allow for that. So you know it's capped at the most, the par amount of those bonds would be $8 million. It also says they can't have an interest rate that's above 8%. So if the interest rates went crazy and it was above that, they would not have the authority to sell bonds at a higher interest rate. It talks about, that they're going to be debt services payable annually, and it has to mature no later than 22 years after the date of issuance. So that's what this document just sets forth, kind of the parameters under which the mayor and the clerk treasurer need to stay when they're doing the negotiations for these bonds. And like Jennifer said, we haven't decided yet how that's going to be sold. And so as that progresses, as the deal gets a little closer to when we're looking at kind of working backwards on when you need the money, kind of see where things stand, what looks to be the best alternative for you all. And that's why you want them to have the authority so that, when it's right to make that decision, they're able to do so without coming back to you all. But tonight is the introduction and first reading of it. There will be a second and final on May the 4th. And although it's not required, the mayor has decided to do a public hearing so that the community has the option to come and hear more about the bonds. So that's something above and beyond. That is not required in the statute. That's just something you all have agreed to allow the community to come in and, ask questions and get some responses before you take your final action. But as you are aware, since this is done under an order of IDEM, it's kind of a necessity that bonds be issued so that you can fund these projects that are required. But from that, there's no ability for the community to say, no, we don't want you to do this, and there's no objection period, anything like that. But they are allowing them to do a public hearing, which is a nice gesture from you all, just to keep the community involved. But I am happy to answer any questions that you might have on different terms that are in here other than the ones that I went over. I'm happy to go over the process. I know several of you have been through it before, but if you have any questions on that, happy to speak to that or answer any questions that you might have.
A lot of legal issues, a lot of legal. Yeah.
In 50 words or less, define sinking fund and bond interest account. Okay, I'll give you 100.
Don't count my words.
Okay, I'll give you 100.
Well, like the different accounts are set up so that just like you have in your existing bonds, your different pots of money are used for different things. So when someone pays their bills, that's the revenue that, and that's another thing, a good thing to say, is these bonds are solely payable out of the revenues, the net revenues of your sewage works. So you're not raising taxes to do this. They can't come and if the revenues aren't there, there's some things that you can do with the state, but it's solely out of those net revenues that these bonds are paid. So those revenues come in and then they work their way through different accounts. And so the sinking funds
I don't even know if in here, a sinking fund is typically if you have like a term bond that has different, the maturity dates, but there's a principal account and an interest account that pays the debt service on these bonds. So that gets paid to whoever is purchasing the bonds. And then there's also, a fund that would pay for just your operation, your maintenance, so all of those revenues, and they work the same for each of your outstanding. So there's an account, and then we know that it has to pay for your 2014 bonds, the principal and interest on your 2017 bonds, the principal and interest on your 2022 A and B bonds, and then the principal and interest on these 26 bonds. And then there's coverage requirements in those accounts, which is how you guys are authorized to issue additional bonds. Which is why your rates were raised, because you have to meet a certain coverage requirement before you're allowed to issue additional bonds. And so that's when Jennifer, does those calculations to see, okay, where are we right now at our current rates? What do we need to get to in order to meet these coverage ratios that are required before you would issue additional bonds? I don't know, Jennifer, is there anything you want to add to that from a fund standpoint?
So the flow of funds that are in the back is pretty standard, and all the revenues come into the operating fund, and then on a monthly basis, Dana makes transfers into the bond and interest account, and that's for all your bonds that are outstanding. We check on the debt service reserve. You'll have to fund that up to its maximum annual debt service on all the bonds, and then the last bucket is improvement fund. So as long as the first few buckets, I always call them, I really think of it as a flow of funds. It goes into the first bucket, then the second bucket, and then if you have any money left over, you put it into the improvement fund. And if you aren't able to do that, that's when you have to call me in to look at your rates, because you have to be able to pay operating and you have to be able to pay your debt service. And capital, you need to do it, but it's not a requirement.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're not the only community that is dealing with this. We know that. A lot of communities have just let stuff just slide and get to the point where you have to do it. So how many communities, just on an average, are you guys working with now? A number just to...
I think there's over 100 combined
Okay.
sewer overflow communities. I forget the exact number, but it's over 100. And so a lot of communities have to do these projects and have had to implement rates.
And then we kind of forget the benefit of this. Obviously, as all of our utility bills went up, the benefit of this whole project does so many things. It keeps our rivers, streams cleaner, environmental improvement. We've already seen an impact on flooding, stormwater from the south end compared to what the north end is. So as we do CSO this year and Highway 3 next year, there's going to be a huge improvement of, when it rains, hour, 2 hours, it's going to be gone. We get heavy rains. It used to be days in the past. So